Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session it's the second first look exploring session of the play Sir Thomas Wyatt, or A Famous History of Sir Thomas Wyatt. And we are in scene, starting basically on scene 10, right after the we basically learned that Wyatt is about to plan a rebellion for what he believes in, and I can't remember what that is. And
don't marry Spanish princess. Don't marry Spaniards. That's what he.
Yes, that was the problem. This is why we have other people here. And here reading the rest of the play with me today are reading Guildford, Harper, and the Clown.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth, and I'm based in Romford.
Yes, I'm reading this off the phone. Reading Suffolk, Norroy, and Norfolk.
Alan Scott, based in Suffolk, and we have a ages-long rivalry with Norfolk.
Yeah, we hear about this a lot. Reading the Lieutenant, Rodston, Messenger, and Ellin.
Hello, my name is Lynn. I live in the northwestern United States.
Reading Jane, Isley, and Brett.
Lois Potter in London, where it all happened.
Reading Wyatt and the Clerk.
Oh, hi, Dan in Montpellier, France, where none of this happened.
Stepping in for someone who's away at the moment is for Arundel, Pembroke, and Winchester, 3 parts, is
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
And I'm Eric Karoulla, and I'm reading basically pretty much everything else, which is sort of stage directions, soldiers, and a headsman. And yes, yes, cool. And I do believe we have. Well, I think Elizabeth was mentioned. If I'm not mistaken. Yes, for first and foremost, because I was going alphabetically, or in the order of the team sheets. Anyway. No worries. And so we begin on scene 10. Enter Guildford, Jane, and the lieutenant.
Good morrow to the patron of my woe.
Good morrow to my lord, my lovely Dudley. Why do you look so sad, my dearest lord?
Nay, why doth Jane thus with a heavy eye and a defected look salute the day? Sorrow doth ill become thy silver brow. Sad grief lies dead, so long as thou livest fair. In my Jane's joy, I do not care for care.
My looks, my love, are sorted with my heart. The sun himself doth scantly show his face. Out of this firm grate you may perceive the Tower Hill, thronged with store of people, as if they gaped for some strange novelty.
Though sleep do seldom dwell in men of care, yet I did this night sleep, and this night dreamed my princely father, great Northumberland, was married to a stately bride. And then methought, just on his bridal day, a poisoned draught did take his life away.
Let not fond visions so appall my love, for dreams do oftentimes contrary prove.
The nights are tedious and the days are sad, and see you how the people stand in heaps, each man sad, looking on his opposed object, as if a general passion possessed them. Their eyes do seem as dropping as the moon, as if prepared for a tragedy, for never swarms of people there do tread, but to rob life and to enrich the dead, and show they wept.
My lord, they did so, for I was there.
I pray, resolve us, good master lieutenant. Who was lieutenant? Who was it yonder that tendered up his life to nature's death?
Pardon, my lord, 'tis felony to acquaint you with the death of any prisoner. Yet to resolve your grace, it was your father, great Northumberland, that this day lost his head.
Peace, rest his soul. His sins be buried in his grave, and not remembered in his epitaph. But who comes here?
My father, prisoner.
Enter Suffolk, guarded forth.
Oh, Jane, Now naught but fear, thy title and thy state, thou must leave for a small grave. Had I been contented to have been great, I had stood, but now my rising is pulled down with blood. Farewell. Point me my house of prayers.
Is grief so short? 'Twas wont to be full of words, 'tis true, but now death's lesson bids a cold adieu. Farewell. Thus friends on desperate journeys part, breaking off words with tears that swell the heart.
And exit Suffolk.
It is the pleasure of the Queen that you part lodgings till your arraignment, which must be tomorrow.
Good Master Lieutenant, let us pray together.
Pardon me, madam, I may not. That they own you, sway me. They that own you, sway me.
Entreat not, Jane, though she our bodies part, our souls shall meet. Farewell, my love.
My Dudley, my own heart.
And they exit. And I don't know if that worked. Anyway, yeah, usually this works. Anyway, and yes, end of scene. 10. Discuss. So basically, they've dragged these two to the tower beforehand, and I didn't know it was a felony to acquaint them with the death of a prisoner. I didn't know if that's accurate.
I tend to doubt it. I think maybe the point of that is like, we shouldn't tell you this, but you're so innocent and sweet. I just don't tell him I told you this. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think it's just sort of to ratchet up the sort of sentimentality of the scene.
Yeah, but then like, what was the whole thing about the arraignment? But they're already the tower and prisoners. Therefore, I'm confused about it, Alan.
Yeah, what had happened was that as part of Northumberland's manoeuvrings early on, Jane and Guildford were sent to the Tower, which was the premier royal palace in London, pending coronation, which is what happened with every monarch, that they spent the time before their coronation in the Tower. What happened was, as soon as effectively the reverse ferret happened on the proclamation of who was Queen, what had been an honourable visit and waiting for the state process suddenly became imprisonment.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So it wasn't that they'd shifted location, it was their status within the location had changed diametrically.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that makes sense. Lois.
I take it the reason that the lieutenant won't pray with Jane is that she is, of course, a Protestant, and since Mary is about to take over as a Catholic, I take it what he means here, they that own you sway me, must mean, I guess, the people that are now condemning you to the Tower and in fact to death are also influencing me, and I can't possibly pray with you now that the state religion has just changed.
Yeah. Alan?
I think it's an early iteration of what's now known as the Nuremberg defense. Just following orders, Gov.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other thoughts about this scene, or shall we move on? Okay, in that case. Scene 11. Enter Wyatt with soldiers and probably George, Harper, Harry Isley, and Robert Rodston. I was going to say Robert Redford. Anyway, yes, Rodston.
I thought me.
Hold, drum. Stand, gentlemen. Give the word along. Stand, stand. Masters, friends, soldiers, and therefore gentlemen, I know some of you wear warm purses lined with gold. To them I speak not, but to such lean knaves that cannot pull up crosses, thus I say, fight valiantly. And by the merry God, you that have all your lifetime silver lacked, shall now get crowns. Marry, they must be cracked.
Oh, no matter. We'll change them for white money.
But it must needs be so, dear countrymen. For soldiers are the masters of war's mint. Blows are the stamps, they set upon with bullets. And broken pates are when the brains lie spilt. These light crowns that with blood are double gilt. But that's not all. that your stout hearts shall earn. Stick to this glorious quarrel, and your name shall stand in chronicles rent even with kings. You free your country from base Spaniel thrall, from ignominious slavery. Who can digest a Spaniard that's a true Englishman?
Oh, would he might choke that digests him.
He that loves freedom and his country, cry a Wyatt. He that will not, with my heart, let him stand forth, shake hands, and we'll depart.
Why?
Enter Norroy, sounding a trumpet.
Forbear, or with the breath thy trumpet spends, this shall let forth thy soul.
I am a herald and challenge safety by the law of arms.
So shalt thou, when thou art lawfully employed.
What loud knave's that?
No knave, Sir Thomas. I am a true man to my queen, to whom thou art a traitor.
Knock him down.
Knock him down! Fino, we'll handle him. He shall sound before he goes.
He comes from Norfolk, and those fawning lords, in Mary's name, weighing out life to them, that will with baseness buy it, seize on him as a pernicious enemy.
Sir George be ruled. Since we profess the art of war, let's not be hissed at for our ignorance. He shall pass and repass, juggle the best he can. Lead him into the city. Norroy, set forth thy brazen throat, and call all Rochester about thee. Do thy office, fill their heads with proclamations. Do catch fools with lime twigs dipped with pardons. But Sir George and good Harry Isley, if this gallant open his mouth too wide, powder the varlet, pistol him, fire the roof that's o'er his mouth. He craves the law of arms, and he shall hat. Teach him our law, to cut's throat if he prate. If louder, reach thy proclamation. The Lord have mercy upon thee.
Sir Thomas, I must do my office.
Come, we'll do ours too.
Aye, do, blow thyself hence.
Exit Harper, Isley, and Norroy.
Wholesome, proud herald, because he can give arms, he thinks to cut us off by the elbows. Masters and fellow soldiers, say, will you leave old Tom Wyatt?
No.
Now march! 'Tis Norfolk's drum upon my life. I pray, see what drum it is.
Within
Arm,
cry,
arm.
arm!
The word is given. Arm flies through the camp, as loud, though not as full of dread, as thunder. For no man's cheeks look pale, but every face is lifted up above his foreman's head, and every soldier does on tiptoe stand, shaking a drawn sword in his threatening hand.
At whom? At whose drum?
At Norfolk's drum. With him comes Arundel. You may behold the silken faces of their ensigns show, nothing but wrinkles straggling in the wind. Norfolk rides foremostly, his crest well known, proud as if our heads were all now his own.
Soft, he shall pay more for them. Sir Robert Rodston, bring our musketeers to flank our pikes. Let all our archery fall out in wings of shot of both sides of the van to gall the first horse of the enemy that shall come fiercely on. Our cannoneers, bid them to charge. Charge, my hearts.
Charge.
St. George for England, Wyatt for poor Kent, blood lost in country's quarrel is nobly spent.
Enter Isley.
Base slave, hard-hearted fugitive. He that you sent with Norroy, false Sir George, is fled to Norfolk.
Sir George Harper fled?
I never thought better of a counterfeit. His name was Harper, was it not? Let him go. Henceforth all Harpers for his sake shall stand, but for play 9 pence throughout all the land. They come, no man give ground in these hot cases, be Englishmen, and heed them to their faces.
And exit everybody. Yeah, that actually worked. Okay. Yeah, so basically in this scene, we've got betrayal upon betrayal, and any thoughts? Alan?
Yeah, Norroy is the senior herald in as much as the senior man at the College of Arms,
Yeah.
the state body which still exists, which gives out armorial bearings and so on. So they've not actually sent a lowly messenger, they've sent the top bod.
And they basically kind of disrespected him. It's not.
Oh
quite-
yes,
yeah,
I mean, Wyatt was getting pretty damn close to committing a faux pas, and then suddenly did a bit of a reverse ferret in mid-speech.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Lois.
Very odd. I mean, given that Harper is about to betray them by going over to him, he's the one that suggests seize on him, that is Norroy, as a pernicious enemy.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly covering his tracks,
Mm.
but I don't quite get it. If they do that, how does that help him get away?
Yeah. Lynn, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was so I looked Wyatt up on the internet and look at Britannica and Wikipedia and so forth, try to get a sense of what we know about the historic Thomas Wyatt. And I guess he was a bit of he was an impulsive youth. He got in trouble for rioting in London in his late teens. And I hadn't really gotten that about his character from the first part of this play, although you could definitely play it that way. He's a fiery young man. A little impulse control challenges. so I think that's where the playwright gets this from. Is his character was known to be, his temperament was known to be kind of fiery and impulsive.
Mm-hmm. Alan?
I was just wondering in Lynn's research whether, I appreciate we're dealing with early modern drama rather than proper history, but what sort of age would Wyatt have been at this stage from what you've seen?
I think he's in his 30s by now.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
he's not allowed at this point. He's a youngish man.
Yeah.
That would make sense. What I was struck by was that sort of, I mean, aside from the wordplay, like his name was Harper, therefore all Harpers, for his sexual stand, but for played 9 pence throughout the land. Like Wyatt got a lot of good speeches, sort of like, the sort of join me speeches, which are quite lovely as well. They're not just sort of inspirational. He was clearly a good motivational speaker. Yeah. Dan, any thoughts on that, or just since you're reading him?
Well, he does come from a poetry background, so there you go.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
He was buddies with his. It doesn't enter into this play, but evidently he was buddies with the Earl of Surrey, who was literarily his father's protege. The inheritor of the then new sonnet tradition. Yeah, I was chatting about this with my husband. He's like, he should have stuck to poetry like his dad. Kids these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, his dad got himself in a little bit of trouble.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he always managed to get it. It's interesting because he always managed to charm his way out again, which wasn't easy to do in the reign of Henry VIII. But he was in trouble, and then he wasn't, and then he was in trouble again, and then he wasn't. So maybe that's something that the younger Wyatt saw. It's like, my dad always managed to talk his way out of trouble, or just wait it out and come back into favor. So maybe that's where he got part of his fearlessness from. It's just like, we're invincible.
Well, when you can write pretty verses like John Denver or Paul Simon, you can always write your way out of trouble.
Yeah, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, in that case, let's just collect more info and see what happens. Scene 12, enter Norfolk. I don't know why this is such a difficult word. Arundel, Brett, and the soldiers, and the clown, who will appear a bit later.
Yonder the traitor marcheth with a steel bow, bent on his sovereign and her kingdom's peace, to wave him to us with a flag of truce, and tender him soft mercy, were to call our right in question. Therefore put in act your resolute intendments. If rebellion be suffered to take head, she lives too long. Treason doth swarm, therefore give signal to the flight.
'Tis good, my lord.
Where's Captain Brett?
Here, my lord.
To do honour to you and those 500 Londoners that march after your colours, you shall charge the traitor in the vanguard, whilst myself with noble Arundel and stout Jerningham second you in the main. God and St. George this day fight on our side, while thus we tame a desperate rebel's pride.
Exit all but Brett and soldiers. And yes.
Countrymen and friends, and you, the most valiant sword and buckler men of London, the Duke of Norfolk, in honor, hath promoted you to the vanguard. And why to the vanguard? But because he knows you to be eager men, martial men, men of good stomachs, very hot shots, very actians for valor, such as scorn to shrink for a wetting, who will bear off anything with head and shoulders.
Well, forwards, good commander, forwards.
I am to lead you, and whither? To fight. And with whom? With Wyatt. And what is Wyatt? A most famous and arch traitor. Nobody by this hand that I know.
Nay, speak out, good captain.
I say again, is worthy Norfolk gone?
Aye, gone.
I say again that Wyatt, for rising thus in arms, with the Kentish men dangling thus at his tail, is worthy to be hanged like a jewel in the kingdom's ear. Say I well, my lads?
Forwards.
And whoever cuts off his head shall have for his labor.
What shall I have? I'll do it.
The pox, the plague, and all the diseases the spittle houses and hospitals can throw upon him.
I'll not do it. That's flat.
And wherefore is Wyatt up?
Because he cannot keep his bed.
No. Wyatt is up to keep the Spaniards down, to keep King Philip out, whose coming in will give the land such a fillip, 'twill make it reel again.
I would it were come to that. I would. We would leave off Philips and fall to hot cockles.
Philip is a Spaniard. And what is a Spaniard?
A Spaniard is no Englishman, that I know.
Right. A Spaniard is a Camocho, a Calimanco, nay, which is worse, a Dondego, and what is a Dondego?
A Dondego is a kind of Spanish stockfish or poor John.
No, a Dondego is a desperate Viliago, a very Castilian, God bless us. There came but one Dondego into England, and he made all Paul stink again. What shall a whole army of Dondegos do, my sweet countrymen?
Marry, they will make us all smell abominably. He comes not here, that's flat.
A Spaniard is called so because he's a Spaniard. His yard is but a span.
That's the reason our English women love them not.
Right, for he carries not the Englishman's yard about him. If you deal with him, look for hard measure. If you give an inch, he'll take an ell. If he give an ell, he'll take an inch. Therefore, my fine, spruce, dapper, finical fellows, if you are now, as you have always been counted, politic Londoners to fly to the stronger side, leave Arundel, leave Norfolk, and love Brett.
We'll fling our flat caps at them.
Wear your own neat's leather shoes, scorn Spanish leather. Cry a fig for the Spaniard. Said I well, bullies?
Aye.
Why then, fiat, and every man die at his foot that calls not a Wyatt, a Wyatt.
A Wyatt. And
Wyatt.
You're Wyatt.
Sweet music, gallant fellow Londoners.
In faith, we are the madcaps. We are the lick pennies.
You shall be all Lord Mayors, at least.
Exit Wyatt, Brett, and soldiers. I'm just wondering whether we should run these together, but then there's probably going, yeah, let's have a break since we're here. Hi, Ellin. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's woken the groundlings up a bit, hasn't it? Giving them something to guffaw about.
Yeah.
I mean, for once, you've got a comedy double act, which actually seems to work.
Yeah.
it's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like, look, Brett can be funny too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unusual because you've actually got two comics working together there,
Yeah.
rather than a comic and the feed.
And yeah.
Hmm.
But the other thing I noticed was, archetypical values and ways of doing things early on, where the two knobs, Norfolk and Arundel, basically is this London guy with his common folk. Well, we'll send him to the point of most danger and we'll lead from behind. It's much less exciting.
Yes.
Yes.
And then, not surprisingly, he decides to turn the tables on them. Yeah.
Yes, Duke of Placatoro, but years before.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah. Who remembers what year this was published or performed about? Do we have a sense?
1607.
It was 1607 it was printed, then 1602 that was the first performance.
Yeah.
Recorded one, yeah.
So it's solidly James.
This before the regime change.
Yeah.
Okay, because by the time this was printed, England had made peace with Spain.
Mhm.
James was concerned with saving money, so he could spend it on lavish living. And styled himself the Rex Pacificus, so that he one of the first things he did was negotiate a peace with the long-standing war with Spain. So I was wondering like how they got away with all this like really deeply anti-Spanish language, and because it was composed while the war was still ongoing and Elizabeth was so do the real scholars in the room have thoughts on that?
Dan or
But it was, but I'm saying that the first performance is recorded from 1602, so it was actually still right. Yeah, as you were saying.
While the war was still going on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's as far as I go with that.
Yeah. It's funny. It's because it's clearly a comedy scene with all this saying one thing and then taking it back at the end and so on. And I don't know whether that's what would dominate with the audience, just this whole surprise element. We've seen a lot of this, characters who say something terribly threatening and then the end of the sentence turns out to mean the opposite, and vice versa.
Well, yeah, it's a bit like sort of. I think it was Stephen in Ben Johnson's Every Man in His Humor, where you've got sort of, oh yes, I can fight them, I can roister him, I can do this, but obviously he can't. And he's like, he's got this big exposition about how good he is at fighting.
I think Decker specializes in this kind of thing. Yeah, and bringing the humor into these serious scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that also sort of it smooths over the anti-Spanish if comic characters are doing it, that we don't take it quite as seriously. The sort of
true.
The violent xenophobia is ameliorated a little by the fact that it's comic characters delivering it, I think.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to what Lynn and Lois just said. They pretty much said what I was thinking about the xenophobic sort of anti-Spanish sentiment. I think that would be quite problematic for a modern audience, because I was like going, ooh, that's a bit of a barb. That's a bit, and I think, I'm not sure how funny the play has been up to this point, but because this is like a pretty much successful comedic element, as Alan said, you'd be loath to cut it out. Yeah. So I was just wondering how you negotiate that kind of anti-Spanish and xenophobic sentiment with the fact that it is actually quite funny and it is actually quite humorous.
Yeah, and a kind of nice break in the tone. So yeah. Good question.
Well, I guess also you would have sort of, if you frame it as a history play, then that would be okay, so to speak. Well, maybe not okay, but you could smooth it over. But then if you frame it as a modern play, which we discussed, I think Aliki discussed it yesterday, where, she was like really excited about using this as a political play. It's set in a modern time. I don't know how that would work. Then again, I don't know, maybe it would. So yes. Any other thoughts on
I don't know. I just think these characters are so clearly comic that their xenophobia is comic too, really. I mean, this whole idea that the word Spaniard comes from a yard of a span long and so on is just so ridiculous. I don't know that it could even be offensive. It's just so stupid.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Anyway.
But also, I mean, the basic idea, you tell this blunt soldier, go ahead, speak to the troops, work them up, and then he does exactly the opposite of what he's supposed to do. It's gets them fighting for the other side or going home or whatever they decide to do.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that is pretty much what just happened. And okay, let's collect more data then, as Rob would say. Thing is, scene 13, alarm sounds and enter Wyatt, Brett, Rodston, Isley, and soldiers again. So basically they just went off and then came back on again after an alarm. After, sounds of battle. And take it away, Wyatt.
Those 8 brass pieces shall do service now against their masters Norfolk and Arundel. They may thank their heels more than their hands for saving of their lives. When soldiers turn surveyors and measure lands, God help poor farmers. Soldiers and friends, let us all play nimble bloodhounds and hunt them step by step. We hear the lawyers plead in armor's stead of gowns. If they fall out about the case, they jar. Then they may cuff each other from the bar. Soft, this is Monkey. Stand aloof, I'll knock.
He knocks. Enter Pembroke up on the walls.
Who knocks?
Wyatt, true friend. Open your gates, you lowering citizens. I bring you freedom from a foreign prince. The queen has heard your suit, and 'tis her pleasure the city gates shall open to receive us.
Avaunt, thou traitor. Thou think'st by forgery to enter London with rebellious arms. Know that these gates are barred against thy entrance, and it shall cost the lives of 20,000 true subjects to the queen before a traitor enters.
Shoot him through.
Stay, let's know him first.
Kill him, then let's know him afterwards.
Look on my face, and blushing see with shame thy treasons charactered.
'Tis the Lord Pembroke.
What have we to do with the Lord Pembroke? Where's the Queen's lieutenant?
I am lieutenant of the city now.
Are you Lord Mayor?
The greatest lord that breathes enters not here without express command from my dear queen.
She commands by us.
I do command thee, in her highness' name, to leave the city gates, or by my honor, a piece of ordinance shall be straight discharged to be thy death's man, and shoot thee to thy grave.
Then here's no entrance.
No, none.
And exit Pembroke.
What should we do, following Wyatt any longer?
Oh, London, thou perfidious town, why hast thou broke thy promise to thy friend, that for thy sake and for the general sake hath thrust myself into the mouth of danger? March back to Fleet Street, if that Wyatt die, London unjustly by thy treachery.
What I could steal away from Wyatt, it should be the first thing that I would do.
And indeed here they all steal away from Wyatt and leave him alone.
Where's all my soldiers? What? All gone? I left my drum and colors without guard? Infelicity of careful men. Yet, will I sell my honored blood as dear as ever did faithful subject to his prince?
Exit Wyatt and enter Norfolk and Isley.
Pembroke revolts and flies to Wyatt's side.
He's damned in hell that speaks it.
Enter Harper.
Oh, my good lord, 'tis spread that Pembroke and Count Arundel both are fled.
And in the true fashion of plays, enter Pembroke and Arundel.
But who said so? What devil dare stir my patience? Zoons, I was talking with a crew of vagabonds that lagged at Wyatt's tail, and am I thus paid for my pains?
And there being missed, some villain, finding you out of sight, hath raised this slander on you. But come, my lord.
I'll not fight.
Nay, sweet Earl,
Zunes, fight, and hear my name dishonored. Wyatt has marched down Fleet Street after him. Why do not you and you pursue him?
If I strike one blow, may my hands fall off.
And if I do, by this.
Come, leave your swearing. Did not my country's care urge to this quarrel? For my part, I would not strike a blow.
No more would I. I'll eat no wrongs. Let's all die, and I'll die.
And enter a messenger.
And on your guard, for this way Wyatt is pursued amain.
A great noise, cries of follow. Enter Wyatt with his sword drawn, being wounded. And
Follow, follow.
follow, follow.
Stand, traitor, stand, or thou shalt ne'er stand more.
Lords, I yield. An easy conquest 'tis to win the field. After all's lost, I am wounded. Let me have a surgeon, that I may go sound unto my grave. 'Tis not the name of traitor palls me, nor plucks my weapon from my hand. Use me how you can. Though you say traitor, I am a gentleman. Your dreadful shaking me, which I defy, is a poor loss of life. I wish to die. Death frights my spirit no more than can my bed, nor will I change one hair losing this head.
Come, guard him, guard him.
No matter where. I hope for nothing, therefore nothing fear.
And they exit. And that is the end of that scene. Lois.
Well, things seem to be happening awfully fast. I mean, I almost get the impression someone's been cutting the text or something because, I mean, it's also extremely confusing. I mean, that may be that we're meant to see that there are all these weird rumors, but I mean, since Pembroke has just put a stop to Wyatt's rebellion effectively, now he's being described as having betrayed them and fled to Wyatt. And presumably that's just a false thing. And then they keep saying fight, and he's saying, I'm not going to fight. Who is he supposed to fight with? I mean, is there a battle going on, or is this meant to be a judicial duel, or what? I mean, it's terribly confusing.
Dan, any thoughts?
I think that's why they've got that scene break there between scene 12 and scene 13. Because, because it says alarm sounds, I think that supposedly in between the time period, there was a battle that was just not, at least not printed, that there was something had gone on there.
Yeah. Alan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could certainly interpolate battle scenes and crowd scenes in a production. I'm rather hoping that we haven't actually lost material, because I think the whole thing is working quite well as a unit. It's moving at a heck of a pace, and you could actually see it as being quite an entertaining show, which would actually fit within, probably played at pace, something like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Which is a pleasant contrast to some of the things we've had lately, which seem to take all week.
Yeah. Rachael, then Lois, Rachael, then Lynn, then Elizabeth.
I think maybe the confusion is this happened, I think, in one of the scenes with Mary, that she seemed to be saying something that had just been disproven, that maybe how we have these large time gaps in other plays, that maybe this isn't a time gap, but the confusion is meant to show something that's happening at the same time, like a sort of meanwhile, because they haven't had time to send off a messenger proper, or somebody hasn't had time to arrive properly from this other place, and just that time lag of information that we don't have that much anymore, where misunderstandings can crop up. Or maybe just one way of interpreting it for a production.
Yeah, that could work. Lynn, and then others.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Alan that, yeah, it does feel like a lot is happening, and that was true of the first half too. We have an attempted coup, and the thwarting of an attempted coup, and the placement of the proper heir on the throne, all in the first half. And so we have a rebellion and a thwarted rebellion here in the second half. It kind of feels like 2 episodes of a Netflix series rather than a whole play, but that's okay. Because we have intervals. So Yeah, and you've got time to put in some crowd scenes and some battle scenes and stuff. I think this would stage really well.
And Elizabeth.
Yeah, speaking of staging this really well, I was just wondering about the scene where it says they all steal away from Wyatt.
Yeah, it just sounds too funny, right?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Lois, because that's how funny I found it. I was like, are they all kind of snaking their way off stage, kind of sliding away? And Wyatt doesn't seem to respond to say, oh, why are you all stealing away from me? You know, I'm just left here by myself. I just thought it was dramatically very, very funny.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. It just seems a bit like sort of, this is a history play, but also kind of, we have comedy play as well, comedy history, I don't know, maybe a spoof or something. Dan.
I just imagine, because of speech before that, when he's addressing London, I just imagine him standing downstage, holding up his sword, giving this speech to the crowd, whilst everyone is stealing away kind of quietly, lurking, slinking away, and he turns around all of a sudden.
Yeah. Turns around ready to do Friends, Roman countrymen, and there's nobody there.
Yeah. And
Quack.
yes. Sorry, I don't have a duck call, but I do have. Yeah, that actually hurts more. Yes. Pretty much. Any other thoughts on this scene? Since we're here, and we do have time. We have 2 more scenes. Okay, so scene 14. Enter Winchester, Norfolk, Arundel, Pembroke, and with other lords and a clerk.
My lord of Norfolk, will it please you sit by you, the noble lord of Arundel, since it hath pleased her sacred majesty to nominate us here commissioners, let us, without all partiality, be open-eared to what they can allege. Where's the lieutenant of the tower?
Enter a lieutenant of the tower who is different to the lieutenant that was before, but yeah.
But not here, my good lord.
Fetch forth the prisoners. Place them severally in chairs of state. Clerk of the crown, proceed as law requires.
Enter Guildford and Jane.
Guildford Dudley, hold up thy hand at the bar.
Here at the bar of death I hold it up, and would to God this hand heaved to the law might have distanced itself in better place for England's good and for my sovereign's weal.
Jane Grey, Lady Jane Grey, hold up thy hand at the bar.
A hand as pure from treason, as innocent as the white livery worn by the angels in their Maker's sight.
You are here indicted by the names of Guildford Dudley, Lord Dudley, Jane Grey, Lady Jane Grey of capital and high treason against our most sovereign lady, the Queen's Majesty. That is to say that you, Guildford Dudley, and Lady Jane Grey have by all means possible sought to procure unto yourselves the royalty of the crown of England, to the disinheriting of this new sovereign lady, the Queen's Majesty, the true and lawful issue to that famous King Henry VIII, and have manifestly adorned yourselves with the state garlands imperial, and have granted warrants, commissions, and such like for levying of men and soldiers to be sent against the said Majesty. Will answer you to this indictment, guilty or not guilty?
Our answer shall be several like ourselves. Yet, noble Earl, we confess the indictment. May we not make some apology unto the court?
It is against the order of the law, therefore directly plead unto the indictment, and then you shall be heard.
Against the law? Words uttered then as good unspoken were, for whatsoe'er you say, you know your form, and you will follow it unto our deaths.
Speak. Are you guilty of these crimes or no?
I'll answer first. I am and I am not, but should we stand unto the last unguilty, you have large conscience jurors to besmear the fairest brow with style of treachery.
The barons of the land shall be your jury.
An honorable and worthy trial, and God forbid so many noblemen should be made guilty of our timeless deaths.
You'll answer to the indictment, will you not?
My lord, I will. I am.
What? Are you guilty or no?
I say I'm guilty still. Yet I am guilty.
Slander not thyself. If there be any guilty, it was I. I was proclaimed queen. I the crown should wear.
Because I was thy husband, I stand here.
Our loves we sought ourselves, but not our pride. And shall our father's faults our lives divide?
It was my father that made thee distressed.
Oh, but for mine, my Guildford had been blessed.
My Jane had been as fortunate as fair.
My Guildford free from this soul-grieving care.
If we be guilty, 'tis no fault of ours. And shall we die for what's not in our power? We sought no kingdom, we desired no crown. It was imposed upon us by constraint, like golden fruit hung on a barren tree. And will you count such forcement treachery? Then make the silver Thames as black as Styx, because it was constrained to bear the barks, whose battering ordnance should have been employed against the hinderers of our royalty.
You talk of senseless things.
Do trees want sense, that by the power of music have been drawn to dance a pleasing measure? Will come, then, nearer unto living things. Say we usurped the English royalty. Was it not by your consents? I tell you, lords, I have your hands to shew. Subscribe to the commission of my father, by which you did authorize him to wage arms, if they were rebellious against your sovereign, who cried so loud as you, God save Queen Jane. And come you now your sovereign to arraign? Come down, here at a prisoner's bar. Better do so than judge yourselves amiss. For look, what sentence on our heads you lay, upon your own may light another day.
The queen hath pardoned them.
And we must die for a less fault. Oh, partiality!
Oh, patience, my Guildford. It was ever known they that sinned least the punishment have borne.
True, my fair queen of sorrow, truly speak. Great men, like great flies, through law's cobwebs breaks, but the thinnest frame the prison of the weak.
Now, trust me, Arundel, doth grieve me much to sit in judgment of these harmless.
I helped to attach the father, but the son, oh, through my blood I feel compassion run. My lords, will be humble suitors to the queen, to save these innocent creatures from their deaths.
Let's break up court. If Norfolk long should stay in tears and passion, I should melt away.
Sit still. What? Will you take compassion upon such? They are heretics.
We are Christians. Leave our conscience to ourselves. We stand not here about religious causes, but are accused of capital treason.
Then you'll confess the indictment.
Even what you will, yet save my Jane, although my blood you spill.
If I must die, save princely Guildford's life.
Who is not moved to see this loving strife?
Pray pardon. Do what you will today, and I'll approve it, though it be my death. Then hear the speedy sentence of your deaths. You shall be carried to the place from whence you came, from whence unto the place of execution, through London to be drawn on hurdles, where thou, Jane Grey, shalt suffer death by fire. Thou, Guildford Dudley, hanged and quartered. So Lord have mercy upon you.
Why, this is well, since we must die, that we must die together.
Stay and hear the mercy of the queen. Because you are of noble parentage, although the crime of your offense be great, she is only pleased that you shall.
Well, will she pardon us?
Only, I say, that you shall lose your heads upon the Tower Hill. So convey them hence. Lieutenant, strictly look unto your charge.
Our dooms are known. Our lives have played their part. Farewell, my Jane.
My Dudley, mine own heart.
Fain would I take a ceremonious leave, but that's to die 100,000 deaths.
I cannot speak for tears.
My lord, come.
Great griefs speak louder when the least are dumb.
And they exit. And that was the
Mm.
wrong end of the anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Thoughts. Then
Real tearjerker. That last line is one of the favorite sort of Senecan quotations. It's what is it? Curai levis loquuntur ingentes stupend. Great griefs, small griefs speak loudly. Great ones are silent. And that's the point of that last line. I mean, everybody knew that line.
And I don't think it's a mistake that it's the Bishop of Winchester who's the villain, who's the real villain in this scene. He's the one that's really determined to have them out of the way.
yeah, everyone else is kind of like, I don't want to kill them. They're kind of they love each other so much they kind of deserve to.
Was it really their
live.
idea?
Yeah, and they're innocent and so on, and just kind of. Well, at
But then they all
least
give
that's
up. I mean, they say, "Okay, do what you want.
Yeah.
I'll sign."
Yeah. Yeah, Rachael, then Elizabeth.
Having read from Winchester's perspective, the speeches are so flowery that Guildford gives that it has I mean, his dad is Northumberland, that it felt sort of like that a bit, like the Thames, like saying the Thames, you're making us guilty for doing the duty of the crown, as if you were to make the Thames guilty for bearing, ships across or whatever. But that's a very different thing, I mean, that's people living their everyday lives in the Thames, and this guy's they come up and taken the crown, and there's a dispute here. I think you could I don't know, you could play it either way, that they are guiltless people and they are truly naive, or that, perhaps one of them's naive and one of them's not. Maybe Guildford has some of his father in him, and that ability to drum up compassion with people and have a way with words, and you could play it either which way.
Yeah, it felt a bit like I'm Spartacus. No, it's not the way to do it. Elizabeth, then.
Yeah, I really like the transition between kind of like the battlefield with Wyatt kind of standing alone, and then he's kind of finally coming to his Waterloo. And then you have this kind of courtroom drama in this scene with Guildford and Jane. And one thing that stood out to me was the sentences were to be hanged, drawn and quartered, and to be set on fire, to be burned at the stake. And they were commuted to beheadings. And I was just thinking that that commuting of the sentence doesn't really kind of satisfy, because it just feels like it's horrible anyway.
Yeah, Lynn and Dan, and then Rachael. This is going to be hard to keep track of. Yeah, Lynn.
Alan, you were next?
Yeah, I mean, my thought on that was, in fact, beheading is at least an instant death. Death by fire and hanging, drawing and quartering were much more prolonged. Yeah. And much more humiliating.
Yeah.
Axeman take a long time to get the head off?
No, normally, if you've got a good headsman, it was one chop and it's done.
Okay.
Burning at the stake would have taken many minutes, if not hours. Yeah. And hanging, drawing and quartering, that was hanged until unconscious, then gutted, and then chopped into four.
Yeah. So pleasant.
Yeah.
Lynn, then Rachael, then Dan.
Yeah, so that's basically what I was going to say. That hanging, and they didn't hang you till you were dead. They hang you till you're almost dead, and then various tortures were perpetrated. So yeah, even though having your head cut off, that's not exactly fun. And sometimes the axeman was a little inexpert, and that was bad. But yeah, it's actually that, just as Alan said, at least it was quick. And not humiliating, and not prolonged. So yeah, it is in a way a commutation. Although Winchester does it delivers that information in a way that's sort of cruel, because he gives them hope that they've actually been, it's commuted to life imprisonment or something like that, because they have hope of surviving. And he's like, oh no, we're just going to kill you quickly.
Yeah, which is cruel. Rachael.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Ellin and Lynn just said that it was viewed as more like humane. But what Lynn just said about him drawing it out, he knows they're not going to be tortured, but I think that's the death that he wanted for them. And that's why he says that. And because he can't physically torture them, I think he tries to draw this trial out like a torture scene for them, which is, I think, great, as an actor to play with, not for the characters living the scene.
Yeah. And Dan, you had something to add.
Pretty much nothing to add. What Alan and Lynn said, what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Amber Lynn was definitely seen to be much more humane to be giving her the beheading rather than being hung, drawn, and quartered.
And they actually hired a swordsman rather than an axeman. So it was additionally quite, she supposedly said that the swordsman's quite expert and I have a little neck. So it was supposed to be quite swift.
It's interesting how that scene works though, and it also because it comes immediately after that battle scene that we had where it was, aside from being confusing, we had that moment of like, why going, where's everybody? It just drops you right into the drama. I mean the tragic part of the story. Well, also I believe this is our final scene. I just realized this. Scene 15. Enter Sir Thomas Wyatt in the tower.
The sad aspect this prison doth afford jumps with the measure that my heart doth keep. And this enclosure here of naught but stone yields far more comfort than the stony hearts of them that wrong their country and their friend. Here's no perjured counselors to swear a sacred oath and then forswear the same. No innovators here doth harbor keep. A steadfast silence doth possess the place. In this the tower is noble being base.
Enter various lords to Wyatt.
Sir Thomas Wyatt?
That's my name indeed.
You should say traitor.
Traitor and Wyatt's name differ as far as Winchester and honor.
I am a pillar of the Mother Church.
And what am I?
One that subverts the state.
Insult not too much, or the unfortunate. I have no bishop's rochet to declare my innocency. This is my cross that causeless I must suffer my head's loss. In that hour come, wherein my blood is spilt, my cross will look as bright as yours twice gilt.
Here's for that purpose.
Is your grace so short? Belike you come to make my death a sport.
We come to bring you to your execution. You must be hanged and quartered instantly. At the park corner is a gallows set, whither make haste to tender nature's debt.
Then here's the end of Wyatt's rising up. I to keep Spaniards from the land was sworn, right willingly I yield myself to death. But sorry such should have my place of birth. Had London kept its word, Wyatt had stood, but now King Philip enters through my blood.
Where's the lieutenant of the tower?
Exit officers with Wyatt, presumably officers who entered earlier, and enter the lieutenant.
Here, my lord.
Fetch forth your other prisoners.
My lord, I will. Here lies young Guildford. Here, the Lady Jane.
Conduct them forth.
Enter Guildford and Lady Jane.
Good morrow once more to my lovely Jane.
The last good morrow, my sweet love, to thee.
What were you reading?
On a prayer book.
Trust me, so was I. We had need to pray. For see, the ministers of death draw near.
To a prepared mind, death is a pleasure. I long in soul till I have spent my breath.
My Lord High Chancellor, you're welcome hither. What? Come you to behold our execution? And, my Lord Arundel, Thrice welcome. You helped to attach our father. Come you now to see the black conclusion of our tragedy.
We come to do our office.
So do we. Our office is to die, yours to look on. We are beholding unto such beholders. The time was, lords, when you did flock amain to see her crowned, but now to kill my Jane. The world like to a sickle bends itself. Men run their course of lives as in a maze. Our office is to die, yours but to gaze.
Patience, my Guildford.
Patience, my lovely Jane. Patience has blanched thy soul as white as snow. But who shall answer for thy death? This know, an innocent to die, what is it less, but to add angels to heaven's happiness? The guilty dying do applaud the law, but when the innocent creature stoops his neck to an unjust doom, upon the judge they check. Lives are, like souls, required of their neglectors, then ours of you that should be our protectors.
Rail not against the law.
No, God forbid. My Lord of Winchester is made of law, and should I rail against it, 'twere against you. If I forget not, you rejoice to see the fall of Cromwell. Joy you now at me? Oft dying men are filled with prophecies, but I'll not be a prophet of your ill. Yet know, my lords, they that behold us now may to the axe of justice one day bow, and in that plot of ground where we must die, sprinkle their bloods, though I know no cause why.
Speak you to me, Lord Guildford?
Norfolk, no, I speak to...
To whom?
Alas, I do not know. Which of us two dies first?
The better part.
Oh, rather kill the worst.
'Tis I, sweet love, that first must kiss the block.
I am a man. Men better brook the shock of threatening death. Your sex are ever weak. The thoughts of death a woman's heart will break.
But I am armed to die.
Likelier to live. Death to the unwilling doth his presence give. He dares not look the bold man in the face, but on the fearful lays his killing mace.
It is the pleasure of the Queen that the Lady Jane must first suffer death.
I thank her highness that I shall first depart this hapless world and not survive to see my dear love dead.
She dying first, I 3 times lose my head.
Enter the headsman. Forgive me, lady, I pray, your death.
Ha! Hast thou the heart to kill a face so fair?
It is her headman.
And demands a pardon only of her for taking off her head?
Aye, gentle Guildford, and I pardon him.
But I'll not pardon him. Thou art my wife, and he shall ask me pardon for thy life.
Pardon me, my lord.
Rise, do not kneel. Thou, though thou submittest, thou hast a lowering steel, whose fatal declination brings our death. Good man of earth, make haste to make us earth.
Pleaseth the Lady Jane, I'll help her off with her nightgown.
Thanks, gentle friend, but I have other waiting women to tend me. Good Mistress Ellin, lend me a helping hand to strip me of these worldly ornaments. Off with these robes, oh, tear them from my side. Such silken covers are the guilt of pride. Instead of gowns, my coverture be earth, my worldly death, or new celestial breath. What, is it off?
Madam, almost.
Not yet, oh God, how hardly can we shake off this world's pomp that cleaves unto us like our body's skin. Yet thus, God, shake off thy servant's sin.
Here is a scarf to blind your eyes.
From all the world, but from my Guildford's sight, before I fasten this beneath my brow, let me behold him with a constant look.
Oh, do not kill me with that piteous eye.
'Tis my last farewell, take it patiently. My dearest Guildford, Let us kiss and part. Now, blind mine eyes, never to see the sky. Blindfold, thus lead me to the block to die.
Exit with Headsman.
Oh,
And he falls in trance.
How fares my lord?
He's fallen into a trance.
Wake him not until he wake himself. Happy Guildford, if thou die in this, thy soul will be the first in heavenly bliss.
Enter the Headsman with Jane's head.
Here comes the headsman with the head of Jane.
who spake of Jane? Who named my lovely Jane?
Behold her head.
Oh, I shall faint again. Yet let me bear this sight unto my grave, my sweet Jane's head. Look, Norfolk, Arundel, Winchester. Do malefactors look thus when they die? A ruddy lip, a clear reflecting eye, cheeks purer than the maiden orient pearl, that sprinkles bashfulness through the clouds. Her innocence has given her this look, the like for me to show so well, being dead, how willingly would Guildford lose his head.
My lord, the time runs on.
So does our death. Here's one has run so fast she's out of breath. But the time goes on, and my fair Jane's white soul will be in heaven before me. If I do stay, stay, gentle wife, thy Guildford follows thee. Though on the earth we part by adverse fate, our souls shall knock together at heaven's gate. The skies calm, our deaths have a fair day, and we shall pass the smoother on our way. My lords, farewell. Aye, once farewell to all. The father's pride has caused the children's fall.
Exit Guildford to die.
Thus have we seen her highness' will performed, and now their heads and bodies shall be joined and buried in one grave as fits their loves. Thus much I'll say in their behalfs now dead, their father's pride their lives hath severed.
And thus the play ends, which is kind of bizarre. I was waiting for a Wyatt death speech, but I don't know if that we just got him being let off as a death speech. But yeah, I'm waffling. Rachael.
I don't know. This seems like one of these Protestant martyrs plays, and maybe that's why like Mary kind of doesn't have as big of part in this, because they don't want to talk badly about her, but they want to show the, terror, the sympathy for these people. And then also by saying Winchester saying the fairer part in this, he doesn't name an actual person. And I think there's it's more of that like mental torture of, perhaps creating a dishonorable moment in their death, hoping that the two will squabble over who is the fairer part, or the worst part or whatever. And Jane, perhaps, Guildford faints here, so he seems to be more lacking in composure than Jane, and her going first is to make sure that they don't die dishonorably or, have shameful, deaths reported after, they're in front of all these people still. And I think she has a very, I guess, head for taste or rumor, or knows what people would say if they show fear in this moment.
I can see Lois twitching, ready to say something, but I'm not sure. That's just you moving around. Lois.
Yeah. Well, no, Winchester, true to his usual form, is particularly awful here. Guildford is just kind of coming out of his faint, and here's her head. Oh, thanks a lot. What a thing to do. I assume you probably talked about Jane Grey last week, yesterday rather, but she was probably the most highly educated woman of the period. Her tutor, Roger Askham, wrote about her with incredible enthusiasm. She was the best pupil he'd ever had. She was brilliant, and she was fluent in all these languages and so on. This doesn't really do her justice, but it mainly just plays up the idea of her innocence and beauty and youth. But presumably she does know perfectly well what's going on, at least, and knows the way. The point that's being made is that their fathers have used them and betrayed them, really.
Yeah. Well, my question, sorry, Alan, yeah, and then Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, a lot of Jane's reactions in this final scene was prefigured in scene 1 or scene 2 when we first met Jane and Guildford, where basically they realised they'd been stitched up by their respective fathers, and the outcome was highly unlikely to be satisfactory.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing was effectively Suffolk and Northumberland doing a power grab, using the son and daughter-in-law as the stooges.
Yeah, Lynn.
So yeah, so oh yes, I'm on. Well, there is a I can't remember. There's a literary theorist from the 18th century or 19th century who says, you know, tragedy isn't the conflict of good and evil; it's a conflict of incompatible goods. So I mean that the playwright has that instinct that it's a little good against evil is entertaining, but really good drama is everybody has their admirable qualities. The victims here, Guildford and Jane, really didn't do anything wrong. Jane never wanted to be queen. Guildford never really wanted to be king. They just want to be left alone. But on the other hand, Mary, the legitimate queen, this play is concerned to let us know that she's the rightful heir. Mary really has no choice at this point, particularly after Wyatt's rebellion. Wyatt kind of expedited their deaths by showing that as long as there's a focal point for rebellion, as long as there's an alternative monarch, Mary is never safe. So she really has no choice but to eliminate this political threat. So yeah, that's sort of politics at its worst, is that there is no humane solution, and that's kind of sucks in life, but it makes good drama.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and also what I was wondering is, I mean, because Dan mentioned earlier that like Dekker has this thing of adding humor to really serious scenes. Well, since this is a Dekker and Webster play, then is it possible to tell who wrote which scene, or would we just assume that they collaborate on the each part together?
People always try to do these kinds of studies, and they're very difficult to say. You can never put much credence into them because they're based off of many different factors, but none of which are completely reliable. Yeah. I'm sorry, Lois, though, because I saw you holding your hand up too to weigh in on this.
Yeah, totally agree, though, Daniel. Yeah,
I think Lois, then Elizabeth, I think, had her hand up, and Rachael.
Yeah, I mean, I think Martin Wiggins has fairly clear notions of which scenes are by whom, because I think that's right. That is the other place where I was involved in reading this, and it was in his group where, they're trying to, anyway, he was certainly saying, I think I can't even remember if it was in the Dekker season or the Webster season, but he was quite concerned about which one wrote which. I can't remember what the conclusions were on that, though.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, these final scenes, Lois said that they were like tear jerkers, and I was like, yeah, like, it straddles the boundary between drama and melodrama, because I feel like the death scenes are quite extended. I was just like, okay, now chop the heads off already, get to it. Yes, we know you love each other. It's not fair. It's really bad that this has happened to you, but come on, let's just wrap it up. And when they finally do die, you're like, oh, okay, good, yeah. That's what happened. I just found that it starts to become a bit melodramatic towards the end. I don't know if anyone else felt the same.
I just like the way of very cruel sort of, yeah, just get it over with. One sec, Rachael, then Lynn, I think, maybe.
Okay.
Great. The drawing it out from their character's perspective, like Guildford, I think there you could put some elements of his dad's speechifying to try, making these beautiful speeches to get his way. But perhaps there is some, from Jane and Guildford's perspective, delaying in the hopes of perhaps a last minute pardon, or something, some turn of the tables or something to come down. Lois brought up the imagery of the showing the head. I wonder if there's some, Salome type imagery coming up there of something like that could be played. And then also the reason I said this stuff with Jane and Guildford and how their speeches could be, you could play them with a little different subtext of not being as innocent, is because we were reading Philotas in the evenings this week. And there's that chorus that says like, and this could go for Winchester too, that the chorus says something about, people using the law, not to do goodness, but basically just to do their will. And there's that whole stuff like that going on.
Yeah, that is The Tragedy of Philotas by Samuel Daniel, which you'll probably be able to find on our YouTube once it's uploaded. And Lynn, you were saying.
Yeah, I agree with Elizabeth. It's a little too much. It gets a little melodramatic, and by the time they go, you're just like, oh, thank you. And the fact that it ends on such a down note, I think maybe is a weakness. I would call that a weakness. Yeah, if I were producing this, I think I would take some of that last scene and interleave it with the Jane and Guildford's previous scene, and end with Wyatt bravely going to his death, still believing that it was right to try to prevent the Spanish marriage. That, fine, here comes Philip, and I won't be around to say I told you so, but I told you so. That's that's kind of what how Wyatt's death ended up being spun, is I told you so. The failure of Mary's reign was often ascribed to Philip's influence on her, because we get to blame the foreigner instead of Mary's zeal for burning heretics. Oh, that was all Philip's idea.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think that's what I would do, is I would take some of this sentimentality, get rid of it. Some of it we'll put it in the previous scene, but Guildford and Jane die, and then we end with Wyatt, since he's the titular character. And it's not quite so much of a down note, that he goes bravely to his death, and we know more troubles are to come. But it's such a downer to end with poor Guildford and Jane. That tonally it's not working for me.
Yeah, Alan, you were saying.
I must admit, I'm without our historian in the room because she's detained elsewhere. I'm wondering actually whether there's more guilt on Winchester in terms of the later crusade against heretics than on Philip. But I'm not sufficient of a scholar of that period of history to make a judgment on it. I think as drama, the way this ends works for me. The one thing that I think maybe because this was the first read and so on, I think I would actually possibly slow the court scene down a bit, with the clerk reading the charges out effectively. That could be prolonged by quite an amount, which would add to the mental torture element that we've identified already within that scene, that the clerk has been told to give due weight to every phrase, which would add, I think, to Winchester's glee in the mental torture he's inflicting on the accused.
Yeah. So any thoughts about this scene, or generally about the play, since we are here? I mean, we've expanded into final thoughts. Lois, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't here yesterday, and I only have rather vague recollections of the play. I mean, it seems to me it's got some good bits in it, but that it is awfully bitty somehow. I'm pretty sure that it needed a final revision where one of the two authors probably would have gone over it and made it hold together a bit more. The thing that I would wonder about in a modern production is just that I think the audience would like to know what happened after that. I mean, particularly to Winchester. I mean, he really deserves something to happen. And indeed, all these characters. I mean, it's one of those things where you really want what you often get on the screen at the end of a historical film. So-and-so died in his bed at the age of 95. So-and-so was murdered at the age of 42 or whatever, just, give them some sense of where this went.
Yeah. Or just sort of, make them come back for the next play. If you can find a play that covers the next period.
Yeah,
I mean,
there
probably
isn't actually.
there are those.
I don't think there. Well, the nearest thing would, what I suppose, be the "If You Know Not Me, You Know Nobody" Part 1. Yeah.
Because the audience for whom this was written knew how things shook out. That was pretty recent history. I mean, nobody watching this was alive when regime change happened, and probably be really old when Mary died and Elizabeth took over. But you knew that. I mean, I'm sure the moniker Bloody Mary was still current in 1602, 1607. Her reputation as somebody who burnt heretics, heretics in her view, people who believed in the true religion in the current official view, in the 1602 official view. So it wasn't really that kind of "this is how it turned out" wasn't necessary for the original audience because it was recent history. They knew. But particularly if you were going to do this outside the UK, I'm not sure. It would be much harder to make this successful over here because we don't know enough about our own history, let alone about the dynastic history and the religious conflicts in the 16th and 17th century in the UK. I mean, that it was the Reformation drove so much of European history in those centuries, and most Americans don't realize that the Reformation was and the 30 Years War and all of that was very much on the minds of the people that designed our government. Like, this whole religion thing, we're going to keep that out because it's just a problem. But as Americans, we aren't taught that, unfortunately. So there's just not enough familiarity with the religious situation and getting Americans to care about the dynastic situation. It'll be harder. I think it's fascinating because I'm interested in this period, but be a harder sell over here than there.
We're all nerds. And kind of, I think it's interesting though that you mentioned religion because they don't really, I mean, okay, there is an element of mentioning religion in this play, but they don't strictly go, you're Protestant, we're kicking you out, or we're whatever.
I'm the representative of the Mother Church. We're Christians.
Yeah,
that's a great answer. That's a great answer. Like we're still Christians.
So Dan, or any other final thoughts? I mean, since we're here.
I really enjoyed this play, the part that I read. I think that I quite like the ending, to be honest. I like that ends on the down note. I think that the drama of it, after having all of this levity in the war, is appropriate because of the gravity of the situation, that it's not all fun and games. In fact, there are going to be some serious consequences here. So I think that for a dramatic arc, I appreciate that it doesn't end with any kind of humor to it, that it seems to be, I wouldn't say necessarily giving you a hopeful ending, but it's certainly leaving you with the sense of, okay, this did really mean something. And I think that's very good to be walking out the theater, a feeling to have. In terms of, for me, I don't find personally why this would be an issue. I mean, just with any audiences back then or now, I wouldn't underestimate the ability of any audience to understand a play, regardless if they understand every detail. I don't imagine that back then or now, it's really necessary if the play is acted well and staged well to understand all the intricate details of it. I don't imagine everyone's going to read Holinshed, before or after this to find out what happened. It's not like they were sitting, I'm imagining that they didn't have programs to read what happened either. I just think that if it's staged well, you're going to get it. And so I certainly see how this could be successfully staged. That's kind of it. There's always been some issue. One other thing, there's always been some issue with this text as to whether it was memorially reconstructed, and not seeing it. And I never get what these arguments when the story seems to hold together. I can see why, oh, well, you didn't include a battle scene here, or you're repeating yourself here or there, but that does not make this a faulty text by any means.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that, Dan, because the verse seems very regular, and I mean, at points sometimes the verse is really quite high quality. So that doesn't really track with, the usual model of memorial reconstruction. People in textual studies, sometimes I really admire them, and sometimes I'm just like, you people are whack.
I mean, the thing about it is that whenever you stage a play, I mean, if you've ever looked at these, I mean, we've talked about this before, and if you've ever seen the way that plays are actually staged, lots of cutting going around. There's lots of added lines, this and that are going to that can sometimes and often do end up in the manuscript that's going to print. So then when people are finding, oh well, this doesn't, there's not enough, the verse lines are irregular or whatnot. It's like, well, yeah, that might have been because that's actually how the original script looked at the end of the day. So, or you repeat this or that here. Well, sorry, because you might have had multiple hats. So I just never buy this argument.
Well, and it's sort of like, even if you could know, once you know, what do you know?
Right.
I'm actually feeling from Emma Smith there. Once you know, what do you know? Is one of her lines. It's like theater is collaborative. It's just inevitably collaborative. There are always many hands and many minds going into it. This whole obsession with who wrote what just seems like, and it can be kind of a fun parlor game, but it's in the end, it's not meaningful. Who cares?
Yeah, true. But also there is an interesting, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because, for example, with the Insatiate Countess, we did get that unsatisfying ending where we were kind of like, well, Marston doesn't write like this. Wait a minute. But yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's just an interesting sort of, well, I think it's more of a trivia thing rather than sort of, I don't know.
It is.
Yeah. Lois, yes.
Yeah, I just feel this kind of play is really a candidate for performance, because that is the way you can test out whether you think it hangs together, whether it feels like a complete play or a draft or what. And it would be very interesting to do it. I mean, there's some quite nice parts in it. I think the bit that would work with most modern audiences is just the appallingly bad behavior of so many of the characters. I mean, everybody really, apart from, Wyatt, Jane, and Guildford. I mean, they all betray each other and use each other and so on. And I think that would actually be, work extremely well with the modern audience.
Yeah, and also you missed the clown who basically went, like yesterday's dark clown scene. We had someone trying to hang themselves, and then he goes, "Oh, look, the halter is worth a lot of money." Shoved the dead body off stage. Yeah, Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, the other character who behaved honourably was Holmes in the end, the guy who betrayed Suffolk, who was the one who'd been bribed and then decides he can't live with the consequences of what he's done.
Yeah.
I think what the players it's come down to us is missing is a lot of the stage business, which probably was only ever noted in the prompt copy. The way I would see this show working, it could be done, I think, very successfully as a youth theatre type production with a large ensemble, because you've got maybe half a dozen major roles, which need people with the ability to put the lines across, and a lot of very short, snappy pieces, which could be done by the next tier down, as it were, and then as many soldiers as you can find costumes for, and punctuate with alarms, excursions, battles, general punch-ups. I mean, the Breton Londoners, you could have almost unlimited cast depending on the size of the stage. And the other thing that struck me is this is one of the very few plays we've done in recent times where you don't actually need trigger warnings. There are virtually no issues in here which are going to cause massive problems for a modern audience. You've got no racist, sexist, the xenophobia, would fit very nicely with the English popular press of the current time. And apart from that, you've got very little else to worry about that, oh God, this is not PC.
Well, there's also the head at the end, which is a bit gore.
But heads in a bag can be done reasonably tastefully, as we know.
Yeah.
Or it could be in an urn or a box where you don't see it at all. The audience doesn't see any blood if it's in a
Various options for heads off are available. And send us your favorite now. No, wait, sorry. Not in a bag.
Guildford does talk about her head and how she still looks beautiful and so on. So he's obviously looking at it.
But he could be looking into a container of some kind that the audience can't see in, but he can.
No, it'd certainly be better if the audience didn't see it. I mean, for one thing, they start thinking, how lifelike is this anyway, and so on.
Yeah. You have the technical problem of too realistic is just going to gross everybody out, and too fake is going to take them out of the moment.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts for Elizabeth and Rachael, or you can, whichever order you would like to go in.
Rachael?
You're so polite.
Both of us saying each other's name. So I was thinking this last scene, some of these like torture scenes that we get that are more mental torture between Winchester, Jane and Guildford seem a lot like Joan of Arc, either by Bernard Shaw or that silent film, I think from like 1927 or something, where it's just a close up on her the entire time, where they got like trial records. I also think you could, even if Americans don't know the English history, I think you could do this for an American stage, because I really didn't know this history. I mean, I do know stuff from having done things with this group, so maybe that makes it a little different from, I guess, your average American person. But when there was like on January 6th, when they attempted like a coup, I wound up staying up to watch them verify the election afterward, and they end sessions of Congress with like a bishop or something who says prayers. So the separation of church and state, even though we say that, doesn't mean it's like always true. And if we change the word like, oh, I'm a Christian, to we praise the same God or something, that it says a lot about modern day religions, that it's not maybe Catholic or different Christianities against each other, but like the hate crimes that happen against Muslim people or against Jewish people in their places of worship in a country, that it could be something like that, or say something like that. And how religion's used as a political device. Maybe the religious side isn't something we would get necessarily, but the political side, we have politics too. So I do think that something could be done, that there is something in this for every audience, is because it is a fantastic play. And I really enjoyed all of this. Yeah, I like Decker and I like Webster. So this was another great thing from them, I think.
And Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it brief. My final thought is just that it's a kind of like a rip-roaring ride of a play. I thought that it was really dynamic, really fast paced, up until the very end where it kind of slowed down. And I am looking forward to watching the previous three scenes, three acts. I think it was the previous sort of 10 scenes that I missed yesterday. Yeah. I do think it was really intricately put together. It is a bit, it does have a little bit kind of an episodic nature to it, but I don't think that that detracts from the play itself.
Yeah.
So overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I am inclined to agree. Although there were some very dark moments, but I mean, it's a play. And especially from this period, if you like, there's a part of me going, we should see this at pace so we can like see whether it flows or not, as Lois said earlier. Any other thoughts? Speak now or don't. Okay, so I guess that's all we have, all the time we have, or all the thoughts we have for this play. If you have any other thoughts, feel free to comment. Goodbye from Beyond Shakes. What is it off?